I never thought a single sentence would shake the foundation of my marriage, but it happened. If I could rewind time, I'd bite my tongue and swallow those words, but life doesn't work like that. When I said what I said to my sister, I didn't mean it to sound as harsh as it did. It wasn't meant for him to hear. It wasn't even something I believed deep down, at least I don't think so. But now that everything's unraveling, I keep wondering if maybe it was the truth I'd been hiding from myself all along. When I first met my husband, it felt like something out of a storybook. We were young, fearless, and absolutely certain that love could conquer anything. He wasn't the type of guy to sweep you off your feet with grand gestures, but he made me feel safe, steady, and valued. After years of chaos in my dating life, that stability was everything I thought I wanted. We met through mutual friends during a summer barbecue. I still remember the way he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. He wasn't flashy, but he was attentive. He listened. And in those early months, when everything felt light and effortless, I told myself I'd found the kind of love people spend years searching for. Our first few years together were incredible. Spontaneous road trips, late-night conversations, and that magnetic pull that made even the simplest moments feel magical. When he proposed, it wasn't extravagant, but it was us. Private, intimate, full of meaning. I said yes without a flicker of doubt. Back then, I couldn't imagine a future where he wasn't the center of my world. He was my person, my safe harbor in a storm I didn't even realize I was running from. Fast forward a decade, and life looks very different. Marriage isn't the glossy picture people post online. It's bills stacking up on the counter. It's exhaustion from back-to-back workdays. It's trying to squeeze in a conversation between deadlines and laundry. Somewhere along the way, the spark dimmed. Not all at once, not in some dramatic movie-like collapse, but gradually, like a candle flickering until you barely notice it's gone out. We don't fight much, which almost feels worse than screaming matches. Silence is heavier. It fills the spaces between us like an invisible wall neither of us knows how to break. It's not that he's done something wrong. He's still the good man I married. Reliable, thoughtful, a partner who shows up when it matters. But somewhere deep inside I've started craving something more. More excitement, more passion, more of whatever it was we used to have. Sometimes I lie awake at night, staring at the ceiling, wondering if this is it. Is this what marriage becomes? Two people sharing a roof, sharing responsibilities, but losing the connection that made it all worth it in the first place. I hate myself for thinking that way because I know how many people would give anything for what I have. But feelings don't listen to logic. That's why I talk to my sister. She's always been my sounding board. The person who hears the things I can't say out loud to anyone else. She's blunt, brutally honest, and doesn't sugarcoat reality. We've had countless conversations about love, life, and everything in between. She knows I've been feeling off. That something's missing. I never planned to spill anything serious that day. It was supposed to be a casual visit. Coffee, laughs, sister talk. But feelings have a way of bubbling up when you least expect them to. And mine were simmering dangerously close to the surface. I keep thinking back to that moment before it all happened. Before the words left my mouth and shattered whatever illusion of security we had left. I was sitting across from her, venting about how tired I felt, how overwhelming everything seemed, how life wasn't what I thought it would be at this stage. And then she asked me a question. One simple question that should have been easy to answer but wasn't. That question changed everything. And in that second, without overthinking, without considering the weight of what I was about to admit, I gave her an answer that would echo louder than I ever imagined. Looking back now, maybe the cracks had been there all along. Maybe I was just too busy patching them up to notice how deep they really ran. Or maybe I just didn't want to admit it. Not to myself, not to anyone. But on that day, with my sister sitting across from me, I let my guard down completely. And for the first time I spoke a truth I wasn't even sure I believed. And it cost me more than I ever thought it would. I didn't realize how much weight a single sentence could carry until it slipped out of my mouth. My sister was sipping her coffee, casually leaning back in her chair, and she asked the question with no warning. If you had the chance to choose again, would you still marry him? It wasn't meant to be a trap. She wasn't trying to start drama. She asked it like someone tossing a stone into a calm lake, expecting nothing more than a ripple. But for me, that question cracked something wide open. And without thinking, I said the words that would burn everything down. Honestly, probably not. I didn't even pause to consider the weight of that sentence. It felt like an exhale, a truth I had been holding in without realizing it. My sister's eyebrows shot up, her mouth slightly open like she didn't expect me to actually answer that way. She didn't judge me though. She just asked, why? And that's when I started rambling, quietly, nervously, like someone confessing a crime in whispers. I told her it wasn't about him being a bad person because he's not. He's kind, reliable, a man who's been there for me through every storm. But somewhere along the way, the version of life I imagined slipped through my fingers. I told her I missed feeling alive, that sometimes I felt like a passenger in my own life instead of the driver. The love was there, sure, but dulled, muted like an old photograph losing its color. As I spoke, I wasn't thinking about him hearing any of this. Why would I? He was in the other room, and I assumed we had privacy. I thought the walls between us were enough to keep my words contained, safe within that little bubble of sisterly trust. But they weren't. At first, there was no sign, no footsteps, no door creaking, no sudden interruption. Everything seemed normal. I laughed a little after saying it, trying to lighten the blow, and my sister chuckled too, though I could tell she was reading between the lines. She said something about how everyone feels this way sometimes, that marriage isn't all fireworks and fairy tales. I nodded, clinging to that reassurance like a lifeline. But then something shifted. The house grew quiet, too quiet. That's when my stomach knotted. It was a silence that didn't feel natural. The kind that makes the hair on your arms stand up because instinct tells you something is wrong. I tried to ignore it at first, convincing myself he was just busy, maybe on his phone or making a call. But then I heard it, the faint sound of footsteps retreating down the hall. Slow, deliberate, like someone trying not to make a sound. My heart dropped. It wasn't the sound itself, it was what it meant. That sound told me everything before I even turned my head. He had heard me. Froze. My sister didn't notice at first. She kept talking, but her voice blurred into the background because all I could hear was the blood rushing in my ears. My hands started shaking and I prayed, begged, that maybe he only caught a piece of the conversation. Maybe he didn't hear the worst part. But deep down I knew. You can feel it when a moment changes the entire course of your life. And this was one of those moments. He didn't come back into the room. He didn't say anything. And that silence was louder than any argument could have been. When my sister finally left, the tension in the house felt suffocating. I walked into the kitchen and saw him standing there by the sink. His back turned to me. My voice cracked when I said his name, and he didn't answer. He just kept staring out the window like he was searching for something out there that made sense of what he'd just heard. When he finally turned to face me, the look in his eyes made me want to disappear. It wasn't anger, not yet. It was something worse. It was hurt. Pure, raw hurt that carved into me deeper than any rage could. But he didn't speak. He just walked past me, brushing my shoulder lightly, and headed toward the bedroom. That single gesture, silent, cold, was 1,000 times louder than words. I stood there rooted to the floor, my throat burning, my chest heavy, and I wanted to chase after him, to explain, to scream that it wasn't what it sounded like. But what could I even say? I had said the truth, or at least something close to it. How do you take that back? How do you unring a bell once it's been struck? That night was unbearable. We moved around the house like strangers, orbiting each other without touching, without speaking. At dinner, the clinking of silverware against plates was the only sound. Every bite tasted like guilt. My sister had no idea what had just detonated between us. She sent me a text later saying she hoped the talk helped, and I couldn't even bring myself to respond. Help. If anything, that conversation set fire to everything I thought was solid. When he finally went to bed, he didn't say goodnight. He didn't even look at me. I stood outside the bedroom door for a long time, my hand hovering over the knob, wondering if I should go in, try to fix it right then and there. But I couldn't move. Because I didn't know what to say. The truth was out now, naked and brutal. And no matter how many words I strung together, I couldn't make it sound pretty. So I just stayed in the living room, staring at the darkened TV screen, feeling like I had set off a bomb I didn't know how to defuse. The worst part wasn't what I said. It was the silence that followed. It was the way that silence wrapped around us like barbed wire, cutting deeper every time we avoided each other's eyes. And as the hours stretched on, one terrifying thought lodged itself in my mind and refused to let go. Maybe I had just destroyed my marriage with one sentence I didn't even mean. Or maybe, just maybe, I meant it more than I wanted to admit. The next morning was worse because there was no pretending it didn't happen. He was already awake when I came into the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of coffee, staring into it like he could find answers in the dark surface. He didn't greet me. His shoulders were tense, jaw clenched. For a second, I thought about turning around and leaving the room because the air felt heavy, suffocating. But I forced myself to sit across from him, even though my hands were trembling so badly I could barely hold my mug. I opened my mouth to say something, anything, but he beat me to it. His voice was calm in a way that scared me more than shouting ever could. If you wouldn't choose me again, why are you here? No anger, no raised tone. Just that question, sharp as a blade. I swear my heart stopped for a second. My throat went dry. I tried to speak, but nothing came out at first. When I finally managed words, they sounded pathetic even to me. It's not what you think. He laughed, short, bitter, not amused. Not what I think. I think you told your sister you'd never choose me again. Pretty sure I didn't mishear that. I wanted to rewind time, erase everything, but all I had were excuses that sounded weak the second they left my lips. I didn't mean it like that, I said. I feel overwhelmed and it slipped out. I didn't mean to hurt you. His eyes met mine then, and what I saw broke something inside me. He wasn't furious, he was broken. That quiet kind of broken where someone starts questioning everything they believed was solid. So what did you mean? He asked, voice cracking just slightly at the edges. And there it was. The question I had been dreading because I didn't even know the answer myself. I opened my mouth, closed it, then finally said the only truth I could manage. I love you. That hasn't changed. But sometimes, I wonder what life would look like if I made different choices. Not because you're not good enough, but because I feel like I'm not the person I thought I'd be. He stared at me like he didn't recognize me anymore. Do you know what it feels like, he said slowly, to hear the woman you gave everything to admit she wishes she wasn't here? His words hit me harder than any shouting could. My chest tightened, my eyes stung, and I couldn't stop the tears even if I tried. That's not what I said, I whispered, but it sounded hollow because deep down, I knew that's exactly what he heard, and maybe what I implied. Then he said something that shattered me even more. Do you even want this marriage? Or am I just comfortable for you? That question hung in the air like smoke, choking me. I wanted to scream that of course I want this, that he's my safe place, my home. But then the silence stretched, and I realized I couldn't give him an instant answer. Because part of me didn't know anymore. And that hesitation was louder than any confession I could make. He noticed it too. His face hardened, and he pushed his chair back with a scrape that felt like thunder in the quiet room. He didn't yell. He didn't slam doors. He just said, I need to think, and walked out, leaving me sitting there with 1,000 words trapped in my throat. When the door closed behind him, I felt like the house caved in on me. My hands were shaking so badly I had to grip the edge of the table to keep steady. I wanted to chase him, to beg him to listen, but what could I even say? That I was lonely. That I missed the version of us we used to be. That I didn't mean the words that slipped out even though some part of me feared they were true. None of it would undo the look on his face. The look of someone who just realized they might have been loving a ghost of who you used to be. The day crawled by in silence. He didn't answer my texts. I sat on the couch staring at the front door, praying to hear his keys, his footsteps, anything that meant he wasn't done with us. Every tick of the clock felt like a countdown to something I couldn't stop. And the worst part was knowing this wasn't just about one sentence anymore. It was about everything that had been festering under the surface for years. All the small disappointments, the dreams quietly buried, the love that had slowly dulled without either of us knowing how to bring it back. That's what he heard in my words. Not just doubt, but the echo of all those unspoken truths. By the time night fell, I was exhausted from crying, my head pounding with regret and fear. I kept replaying the moment in my head, trying to figure out how to take it back, but there's no undoing something once it's out in the open. That's the thing about honesty, it can heal, but it can also destroy. And I was starting to realize I might have burned down the life we built with one careless spark. When he finally came home, he didn't look at me. He went straight to the bedroom and shut the door without a word. I sat there in the dim light of the living room, listening to the quiet hum of the refrigerator and wondering if this was the sound of my marriage ending. Because no matter how much I wanted to fix it, no matter how much I loved him, I couldn't erase the fact that when he asked me if I still wanted this life, I hesitated. And that hesitation might cost me everything. I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling while he breathed quietly on the other side, a wall of silence between us that felt thicker than any locked door. Every second that passed felt heavier, like the weight of all the words I couldn't say pressing down on me. I wanted to reach out, to touch his hand, to whisper something that would undo everything, but I couldn't. Because what if he didn't reach back? What if he didn't want to hear me? That fear froze me in place. Morning came and nothing had changed. He woke up, showered, got dressed, and left without a word. No eye contact, no goodbye, just the sound of the door closing. It was worse than anger. It was absence. It was like I'd already lost him, and he was just a ghost moving through our home. The silence screamed louder than any fight ever could, and it tore through me until I couldn't stand it anymore. When he finally came home later that night, I was waiting for him. My heart was pounding so hard it felt like it would bruise my ribs, but I forced the words out because if I didn't speak now, we'd never come back from this. "We need to talk," I said, my voice shaking. He didn't look surprised. He just nodded like he'd been waiting for this moment too. He sat across from me, and for a few seconds neither of us spoke. Then he said quietly, "I just need to know if you even want to be here. Because I can't stay in a marriage where I'm not wanted." That broke me. I felt the tears before I even knew I was crying. "I do want to be here," I said, my voice cracking. "I love you. That hasn't changed. But I've changed. Life hasn't been what I thought it would be. And I let that make me feel trapped instead of talking to you about it. That was my failure, not yours." The words tumbled out in a rush because I was terrified he'd walk away before I could say them. He didn't interrupt. He just listened, his expression unreadable. When I finally stopped, he asked, "So what does that mean? Do you want to fix this, or do you want to leave?" The question hit me like a punch because it forced me to choose right then and there. No more hiding behind hesitation, no more excuses. And the truth is, I didn't want to leave. Not really. I wanted the version of us that used to exist. I wanted the laughter, the connection, the feeling of being seen. And deep down, I believed we could get that back if we both fought for it. "I want to fix this," I said, steady this time. "I don't know how, but I'm willing to try." For a long time, he just looked at me, and the silence stretched so thin I thought it would snap. Then he sighed, leaning back in his chair, and for the first time in 2 days, I saw a flicker of something other than hurt in his eyes. Maybe relief, maybe doubt, maybe both. "If we do this," he said, "it has to be real. No half effort, no pretending. Because I can't go through this again." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "I know. Min. Whatever it takes." The words felt heavy because I understood the weight of the promise I was making. This wasn't just about saying sorry and moving on. This was about tearing down everything we'd been doing wrong and rebuilding from the ground up. And even then, there was no guarantee it would work. But I owed it to him, to us, to try. The next few hours were a blur of raw honesty. We talked about things we had buried for years, how he felt invisible sometimes, how I felt suffocated, how neither of us had been brave enough to say those things before. There were tears, long pauses, moments where I thought he'd get up and walk away. But he didn't. He stayed. And by the time we finally went to bed, nothing was fixed, but something had shifted. We weren't standing on opposite sides of a chasm anymore. We were at least facing each other across it, trying to figure out how to build a bridge. Still, when I closed my eyes that night, fear lingered. Because trying doesn't guarantee success. Couples try all the time and still fall apart. And I couldn't shake the thought that no matter how much we wanted to fix things, maybe the damage was already too deep. But then he reached for my hand under the blanket. Hesitant, almost like he wasn't sure if I'd pull away. I didn't. I held on like my life depended on it. 'Cause maybe this was our second chance. Or maybe it was just the beginning of a long goodbye. I don't know how this story ends. I don't know if we'll make it through counseling, if love will be enough to outweigh everything else, or if one day we'll sit across from each other and admit it's over. All I know is I'm not giving up yet. Not without a fight. So here I am, asking strangers on the internet. Did I ruin my marriage by saying something I didn't fully mean? Or did I just say out loud what most people secretly think at some point? Am I selfish for wanting more when I already have so much? Or am I just human? I keep replaying that moment in my head, wondering if I could have answered differently. Maybe then everything would still feel normal. But normal doesn't always mean happy. And maybe that's what scares me the most, that deep down I wanted a change and got one, just not the way I imagined.